Hey everybody, Matt Mullen with the Polywire here. Today I want to tell you a little bit about electric fencing, how to choose your wire and your reels, and why we chose what we did. This is the type of fencing material you would need for whether you're going to have, if you want to rotate your sheep, your cows, your hogs, you're probably going to need something like this. So what you're going to look for when you're ordering, obviously you need some kind of wire or braid. You're going to need a reel. Some of the reels will come with a handle. If they don't, you're going to want to get one. Then the only tools you really need are either some diagonals, wire cutters, dikes, whatever you call this tool for cutting wire. You're either going to want one of these, or if you like abusing your trusty pocket knife, make sure it's good and sharp, but this will also cut through the wire just fine. And then finally, you just need a little lighter, and we'll get into that more later. So to start off, let me show you what we used to use, and then I'll go on to show you what we use now and why. So when we first started off with our sheep, we were very eager, and so we went to local feed and seed type store and got what they had on the shelf. And so first we'll talk about this reel. So this is a pretty standard reel, very simple. It's just 1-to-1. You turn this handle one time and the spool will turn one time. It's got a locking feature. So when you're pulling your wire, you want to pull this all the way up, you'll pull all the way out, and then when you get to the end, you'll lower it down to lock it, tighten it up by reeling it in as much as you want, and then it's got this hook on the front where you can just hang it on your perimeter fence or wherever you're going to hang it. You've of course got your handle here to hold it, good handle here for turning. This little metal bar, I'll show you that more on this next one, but this allows you to tie your wire or braid to before you reel it in, and also is a good conducting point. Again, I'll tell you more about that later. Then you've got your wire and your handle. This is a conductive handle I bought separately. So that means if you tie your wire to this metal end here, it's going to conduct through here. And that may or may not be what you're looking for. This is really, they call this a gate handle. Again, I bought it because that's what they had at the store, so I used it. So this is a decent reel. It's nothing fancy. This runs about 50 bucks-ish, at least as, at this moment. Things are of course going up in price, but this is about $50 right now. And the wire on here is about $50, but I'll get more into the wire again later. So let me show you the kind of reel that we get now. All right, so this is Gallagher's geared reel, and I think they call this their medium size. It's pretty standard. It's the same, basically the same as this. They both hold about a quarter mile of wire or braid. And I'll show you some of the bigger differences between these two. So as you can notice, one of the biggest differences is this. This is a wire guide. So when you're going to put your wire on this reel, you would feed it through this guide, tie it on this little metal wire here, this little metal rod, before you start reeling in. And that helps keep the wire on your spool. So one of the most common problems you have with these reels when you're reeling them in is your wire will come outside the spool and it'll get bound up on either end. And that just is it's just a pain in the butt. It'll cost you 5 or 10 minutes of trying to undo your wire and try to get it back on the spool before reeling it in or pulling it out, and it just gets old really fast. So a guide is a huge help. Another nice thing about this Gallagher is it has this little lock on the hook on the front, and very easy to operate. You just push that down, this opens up, and that way you can actually lock it on something so you know it's not going to fall off. Now most of the time when you're just hanging this on like your perimeter fence or woven wire or whatever you're going to hang it on, it's not really a problem. It's probably not necessary. Gallagher kind of advertises this as like you could find something on your four-wheeler to lock this onto and ride around on it. I'm not sure if I don't use it that way. I'm not sure I love that, because I feel like if you're riding your four-wheeler hard, this is going to bounce around a lot. Maybe it would be just fine. I don't find the lock absolutely necessary, but I do like it. I like the security of just knowing that, like, when I put this on my fence, I can lock it and I can feel confident that it's not going to accidentally fall off. Of course, the less expensive one doesn't have it. Another thing you might notice is the Gallagher is somewhat unique. I don't think I've seen any other reels that have this, but it has this little hand guard on it. So as you're reeling in your spool, if it starts to fill up, it's not going to eat up your hand. Now this can kind of go either way, because that also means your wire is going to be rubbing against this if you don't wind it up right or fill up your spool evenly. So, you know, I could do with or without this. I mean, I guess I'm glad they have it, but, you know, if they didn't have it, it would be absolutely fine. The one downside to this is that, you know, if you watch folks like Greg Judy, a lot of times they transport and pull their wire by feeding this handle through like a tube that they would mount on the back of their UTV or four-wheeler. You obviously can't do that with this Gallagher. You would have to, and what I do is put it on this hook and let it ride that way as I pull it. Now, the real magic of reels like this is, you know, I'll show you. So this, okay, so you see these metal rods. I'm going to spin this handle one time, and we're going to count how many times this comes back to this position. Okay, ready? 1, 2, and 3. So I've only turned this one time, and this spool has rotated 3 times. That saves you a ton of time. Whether you're, you know, when you're reeling it back up, you know, if you're going at a walking pace, you're really winding this thing to just try to keep up with your walking pace, especially if you pulled the wire pretty far to the end. You're gonna have to spin this a ton of times just to keep up with you. This one's much easier, and with the right wire, a lot of times I can just stand still and reel in this entire spool without much problem. I can't do that with this one, especially with this wire, and I'll tell you a little more about that later. But this reel runs about $50. This reel, this Gallagher, runs about $100. So it's a significant price difference. I think it's worth it. Now, if you're just starting off with just a few animals, maybe something like this is going to be just fine until you decide whether it's something you really like, really want to do. I think this is worthwhile, worth the investment. And so the biggest difference is really the geared aspect of this. And there's a few different companies that make the geared ones. I think O'Brien's, Terragate, and I know there's others, but those are the 2 other ones that stick out to me. I bought the Gallagher. I've used it. I really like it. So that's what we've kind of stuck with. So this is a good reel. This is what we'll be using today. Now let's get a little more into the wire. All right. So I'm gonna do my best to show this. This is getting a little close. I'm not sure how well this is gonna work out. So this is what we had on our old reel, and this is what we're going to be using today, what we've used for a while. So starting with the old wire, you can tell it's pretty coarse, and if I just give this like a little bit of twist, it'll kind of exaggerate it, but little twist, you can see that's kind of coming apart a little bit. You can see big gaps between the wires and the plastic that's braided together. And those gaps make it very easy for briars or twigs and stuff to get caught in this. And that's not what you want. That causes the wire to break and all sorts of problems. This one is much more, this is called poly braid. Is much, even if I try to twist this, you can see some tiny, tiny gaps, but this is much more finely braided together. All right, so one thing I'll tell you a little more about too is these handles. Like I said earlier, this is a is really made for a gate handle. So it's really meant for like if you have a continuous fence going across somewhere and you want to put a gate in the middle, this is one way you could connect one end to the other and have it conductive all the way across. Most of the time that's not what I'm using it for. I'm usually terminating this on like our perimeter fence, which is like a woven wire fence. If you use something like this on a woven wire fence and then you energize your wire, it's just going to short out. It's not going to provide much shock to animals that touch it, and it's going to drain your battery super fast. So if you decide to use this the way that we do, you're going to want to wrap this in like electrical tape or something. That's what we do. And if I haven't said it before, I just want to say again, I'm not telling you the right way to do any of this stuff. I'm telling you what we do and what works for us. Now, some of the other reels, like the Gallagher, will come with an insulated plastic handle. And it's got a pigtail on this end, so it's really easy to connect to woven wire, your polybraid, polywire, whatever. And I've never had this accidentally come off. So as far as handles that come with a reel, these are great. I really like these. Okay, so again, this is what we used to have. This is what we have now. As you can tell, I've got my poly braid on here. Now the Polywire on here is about $50. Again, I bought this like in person at a box store locally. The poly braid that's on here is about $70. So if you're gonna skimp on either the reel or your wire, just skimp on the reel. Get the cheaper reel, get the more expensive wire. And I'll show you a little more up close as to why. So this poly wire is a little bit older, but I've used it probably just as much as I've used the poly braid. So I've told you how this can get hung up and caught on stuff. See that fraying in that wire? That is not good. That means that wire is not going to conduct very well. It's going to arc in the middle of your wire, and it's not going to provide the right psychological barrier you want for your animals. And like I said, this is relatively light use. So I wouldn't recommend the poly wire. Go ahead and get you the poly braid. And I'll show you the difference here. Like I said, I've used this just as much as that poly wire, and it's not frayed at all. It's in great shape. And I've abused this more. Like I said, I'll sometimes just stand still and I'll just reel it all the way in, and it just doesn't get hung as often, and it doesn't tear up the wire. I don't get any arcing in the middle of everything. So go and get you some good poly braid. Don't cheap out on the wire. I mean, if you had to, you can make it work. We made it work for years, but you're gonna have to check it often and fix it as you need to. Another thing we learned as we did this is I would highly recommend, whether you're gonna use poly braid, polywire, electric netting, whatever kind of psychological electric barrier you want to use, don't leave it out uncharged. If you do that, then mice, rats, squirrels, for some reason, think it's really fun to chew on that wire. And they will chew your wire into bits. So just, if you're gonna leave it out, leave it charged. And that'll help keep all the rodents and stuff off of it. Okay, so now we've talked about that. Quick overview real quick before we reel these up. It's about a $50 reel, about $50 a wire, $100 reel with about $70 worth of poly braid. Again, highly recommend this combination. It doesn't have to be Gallagher. We've really liked it, but it doesn't have to be Gallagher, but get you a geared reel with a guide. Those are the two most important things as far as I'm concerned. And that's worth the extra expense. And if you're gonna have, if you're gonna have sheep or cows or something like that, and you're gonna want more than one wire going across, even if you're doing a small paddock size, I would recommend getting multiple of these for, like, if you want to do 2 wires, then get 2 of these. We started off with, if we were doing relatively small paddocks, we would just kind of zigzag this. We would pull it across, come back across, and all that. It just takes more time to do it that way, to kind of zigzag one spool. Just, even if you're doing a short run, it's really nice just to be able to pull 2, 3, 4 wires at a time. Again, it depends on what your wallet allows, but that sure makes things easier. Also note that for rotational grazing, you're going to want to set up your next paddock before you break down your old paddock. So you're probably going to want at least twice as many. So like if you're going to do 2 wire paddocks and rotate your animals around, you're probably going to want 4 spools at least. So just something to keep in mind as you're looking into this. Okay, now we can get into actual reeling the wires.